Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, guys. How we doing? How we doing? Good to see you, Doug.
Oh, were you talking to us? I'm
I'm
sorry,
talking to
Dave.
you.
We're doing
I'm
fantastic.
talking to you.
It's a great day.
It is a great day.
If we just
Sorry
knew who
about
was
that.
talking to who. Welcome, everybody. Let us know where you're coming in from. Put it in the chat. Where are you guys coming in from? Doug first.
We are in San Antonio.
San Antonio, Texas.
Absolutely.
And not too far from Jeanette is in Dallas, Texas. So you guys are fellow Texans. So I'm coming in from Woodstock, Maryland, which is like outside of Columbia, Maryland, between Baltimore and DC. We got Rob from Nashville, Tennessee. It's just there a couple weeks ago to see Toto and Men at Work. It was awesome.
Wow. Okay.
Bet you didn't expect that today, did you? All right, Boise, Idaho. We got Steve Kennedy, one of my buds, coming from Fort Myers. He does some office things as well. Beatrice from South Jersey. That's like Philly, I think, right? Right, Beatrice? All right, we'll get started in just a minute. Let us know where you're coming in from and let people kind of come on in. Let us know where you're coming from. I am also going to read in just a minute a couple things that I'll pull in. So if you would like to let me know what this would be the best briefing ever if. I got a couple really good ones from folks that did this on the registration. And if there's anything that you'd like us to address, pop that into the chat too. But you can certainly let us know where you're coming in from. I always like to know where folks are coming in from so that we can get to know each other a little bit anyway. So let us know. I got some really good ones that I'm going to read for everybody. But we'll let people get here in just a minute. We got 21 folks so far, which is great. Welcome, 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 everybody. Pop it in there. We got somebody from Portland, Clint from Portland. That's a nice place too. Been there. You guys have been all over the place too, haven't you, Brian?
Yes, sir, we have. Clear across the country.
There you go.
From one end to the other.
There you go. Is it Spokane or Spokane? How do you say that? How do we say that? Hang on a second, Jared. We got 3 Jareds here. Spokane. Thank you very much. Can. Thank you. Kevin from Quantico, Virginia. I have a cool story about that too. I'm not gonna tell you, but I was there. Quantico's a neat place. Got to meet everybody, the commander and everybody while I was there. Very cool. All right, let us know where you're coming in from. Love to know. We'll get started in just about. We'll go ahead. We'll go ahead and get started since most folks are here anyway. All right, we're talking about master planning for federal workspaces and eliminating legacy waste and maximizing efficiency. How you like that? That's one of the shortest titles we've ever had, guys. Just saying. And we want to welcome everybody from all the govies that are here. Really good to have you. A lot of folks in the VA, folks from FAA, some really good feedback from you guys coming in. The DHA, FDA, we got a bunch of people here. And Space Force, welcome aboard, guys. If I miss you guys from here, let me know. I'll make sure I make note of that. I want to welcome you guys for joining us. I know you got a lot of things going on. It's only the fiscal year end. In September, craziness that's happening. So I know you guys got a whole lot going on. I want to welcome Doug Lowe. He's the founder and president of Facilities Programming and Consulting, as well as Brian, who handles things. We got a couple great case studies for you today, and Brian's going to handle some of those. I am your GovBrief host. For GovBrief, we help to do the connections here and make sure we're facilitating communication with you guys. And facilitation of this communication has passed GSA muster, Doug. And Doug and I are not related, by the way. Just let everybody know. Dave Lowe, Doug Lowe, not related. But this session does include a vendor, which is Facility Programming and Consulting, and it's not affiliated or endorsed by GSA or any other agency. It's provided with you as informational purposes only. And you can participate because you're not going to agree or endorse anybody here. It's not a commitment to purchase from any vendor. And we are recording this. GSA gave us that directly. So this will be the best briefing ever if. Go ahead and populate that in for me. I got a couple here. Eric from the VA says it shows how to maximize efficiency. Love that. That's a great one. And Robert from DHA, a roadmap of right sizing of workspaces is discussed. That's it, guys, isn't it?
That is part of it, yes.
And then Mark from the FAA says align workspaces with actual workflows and consider international operational challenges. I'd love to hear more about that from you, Mark. Lane from the VA, I can stop the harassing. Now, I don't know what's happening there, Lane. Is Lane here yet? I would love to hear that. All right, we'll find that out. Jared, I heard something about space planning that blew my mind. There you go, Jared. We're gonna do our best, right? That gotta blow Jared's mind, Doug. And
Do my best.
Here's Davon. If he learns something, anything, it'd be best briefing ever if he learns one thing. I love it. All right, Everardo. If I said that wrong, I apologize. From the VA, it could provide high-level plans and timelines. We will talk about high-level stuff, right, Doug?
Yep.
And James, it provided guidelines on how to plan workspaces based on current technology. That's another good one, right, Brian?
It is, actually, yes.
And Clint from the FA has my favorite. It was short. There you go.
We will try our best.
We'll do our best. That's exactly right. Let me do this other one. And then also, we also will ask this question. So if you have anything, pop that in there. I like this. Steve Kennedy's popping in. Maximizing federal dollar and capital dollar spend and reducing operational cost impacts. Always love that. All right, so please address. So here we go, guys. This is one that we want to come back to later. Make sure we get this. Jeanette from the VA says how to help encourage legacy employees that they should right-size their spaces, including their own office. Do you get that granular? Do you get down to the office level, or?
We actually do.
Yes.
Oh, fantastic. All right, so Colleen from the VA, a lot of VA folks, provide examples of your scenarios to help me understand the material in question. We'll absolutely do that. We got 3 case studies, right, guys?
Yes, sir.
All right, and then we have James, how to turn blueprints into actionable design plans. I like James. That's a good one.
This sounds like an interesting seminar, Dave.
I'm telling you what, we got people that are dialed in. Crystal, this is awesome. Aging infrastructure, growing population, smaller budget, inflation, FTF, RTO, contracting, leasing time, and policy considerations. I think you're gonna need, Crystal, you guys are gonna need to do a Vulcan mind meld after this, because there's a lot in yours. But we'll do what we can, right, Crystal? She's also put stuff in here. How to work RTO with freeze in the footprint still in effect. That's a big deal. Without additional funding, aging infrastructure, and increasing veteran population. You're up against it, aren't you, Crystal? That is true. Everardo also says appropriation of space and lease funding according to veteran catchment areas. That'd be interesting. Probably going to have to take that one offline. Jared, again, how to prioritize space optimization efforts against failing facilities and infrastructure. Right on. Spot on. Appreciate that one. All right, that's what we got so far. If you have anything else, pop it in there. We want to make sure we address this for you, because that's what this is all about. If you have any questions, you can raise your hand. You can pop it in the Q&A. I'll pay attention to the chat as well. If you have anything that you don't want everybody else and their mother to see, you can send it to Brian Sibille, Sibille, at facilityprogramming.com. Sound good?
Facility with a Y.
Facility
with a Y, yes.
Ah, very good. Very good classification there. All right, we do have the session docs. We love the feedback. And the first feedback I'm going to ask you is, number 1, can you get to the link that I just popped in there, and it looks like this? Can you get to it? Thumbs up. And then what you want to do is hit this download button, and it'll download all the docs so you can have it later. Everybody got it? We good? So I want to make sure that that's opening up. And the session docs you have in there. We have a EO in there. We have some of the congressional things. Negative for the Air Force. Jared, we'll get that to you some other way. We'll want to make a note of that. We'll make sure we send those out as attachments to folks on these, okay? We good with that? Everybody else got it? We good? Just want to make sure if anybody else doesn't, then anybody else needs it. All right, so you'll have those session docs for you, and then we're going to ask this question. Why in the world did you guys decide to join us today? I want to make sure we get you guys in here. Are you just trying to get your hands, maybe your head around workspace improvement? Maybe you need to make changes to be more efficient, or maybe DOGE is telling you to. Space issues, if you're having issues with your space requirements, or your boss made you come. There's got to be some Weisenheimers out there that choose that last one. Right, Brian?
Absolutely. Well, my boss made me come.
I guarantee you he did. All right. So, and with that, let's talk about what we're going to be talking about today. We did welcome and introductions for everybody. We got that one out of the way. We're going to talk about strategic facility alignment. And I know, Doug, you're highly passionate about this. We'll talk about what you guys are seeing, what you guys have done, and how you've been helping federal agencies to do that. We got 3 federal case studies, right, guys? Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Yes, we do.
And then we get into some practical applications of what you can do today, what it means, how you can start it. And it all starts with defining the problem, right, Doug?
That's right. And if you think about strategic facility alignment, what it means is balancing what you need with what you've got. And I learned a long time ago that most of the people I have in conversations can read. So I'm going to do my best not to read bullets to you today. But one of the people talked about operating costs. So we're just going to latch onto that for an introduction.
Yep.
Everybody knows that for the most part, labor is your number 1 cost of operations, and facilities comes in at number 2. So having an understanding and a grasp on how you should be using facilities falls directly to the bottom line. So let's move on.
Yeah, we'll get you guys out of here on time for your next meeting today, because we know you guys got a lot of things to do. So I'm going to introduce again, Doug Lowe is the founder, right, of Facility Programming Consulting. Tell us how you got started and why you do what you do.
Well, programming is one of those words that means different things depending which discipline you're in. And in the world of facilities, it simply means figuring out what you need to do before you try to do it. I sometimes describe it as writing a recipe for anything that you need related to buildings or campuses or facilities. And that's our specialty. We're an architectural firm by training and education, been in business for 33 years, but we don't design anything. We are in the problem definition business. We help our clients make evidence-based decisions. We use data, and we come up with a strategic roadmap. I heard that talked about earlier. And it's not always just about office space. Now, that's a big one, and a lot of people are focused on that, but it goes much beyond that. And I think the case studies will show you how facilities can be spelled with a capital F and cover a lot of ground.
I love it. Fantastic. Now, you've been doing this for a while. Tell us a little bit about some of the projects you've worked on, 1,200 plus.
Well, we have worked all over the government. I like to say that we have been on more military bases than the Secretary of Defense. Lots of federal installations. You can see the numbers there. We worked internationally. We also have a big practice in higher education. And I've once told my wife when she asked me, what do I do? I said, well, we can look at future population expansion and convert that into the number of classrooms that a community college needs. So it's that sort of understanding using data to make good facility decisions.
Love it. And we're going to be talking about these case studies today.
We've picked out 3 today because we think they paint a pretty broad picture of how the word facilities can be interpreted. One for the Weather Service, one for the National Ocean Service, and then one for a small federal agency called National Marine Sanctuaries. Pretty interesting groups.
And that's a wild one. I love talking about that one, so I can't wait for people to kind of get that one. Hear how you guys help with that. So
Okay.
how does everything start?
All right. You start with a problem, and everybody is going to have a separate view of the problem. It's like, how do you, if you blindfold someone and you have them feel an elephant, they're all going to describe it differently. These are just some of the things. People coming back to work after years of empty space. Some people have not enough space. Some people, most people are going to say that their facilities were designed in the last century, and their mission is evolving, well past 2025 and into the future. So there's a big disconnect there in terms of what was originally planned and what you're trying to make it do. One of the big issues or the takeaways from that is collaboration. Work today is not individualized. I don't sit behind my desk in my office doing my tasks all day long. And I don't think you guys do either. You're either in the field, you're working with others, you're interacting, you're solving problems, but it's not always an individual task like it used to be. The problem is that workspaces are usually designed to be individual. So one of the big issues is finding places and ways for collaboration and team problem solving.
Could not agree more. All right, let's find out from what's happening with them. Which ones do you have? You can pick as many as you want. You can even make up your own. At the bottom, you can choose in the comments, you can make up your own, but empty desks, not enough desks. Facilities designed last century. We got folks here from the Space Force that didn't even exist. And they're using facilities somewhere, somehow, right?
That were designed for another agency.
That's exactly right. And then not functional to your mission. We've heard a lot about those, right? Right, Doug?
Yes.
Yep. And collaboration space, great one. Great questions. Great questions. Remote workers to return in office. That just happened this year too, right? We were all kind of banished for a while from this. I don't know if you heard about this, Brian. There's something called COVID happened.
Unfortunately,
We learn a lot when we work on a community college campus.
I'll bet
Just
you
to
do.
tell a story that's not in the federal arena, community colleges are in the business of teaching kids to get jobs. And employers want kids who can work together, can collaborate, can solve problems. And that can be on the factory floor, or it can be in a hospital. It doesn't really matter. And you are living that world too. So we understand what it takes to create the kind of workforce that can help you do your job. And the natural outgrowth of that is what kind of facilities wrap around that workforce.
I love it. So let's start talking about, you mentioned this, space is a resource. So what does that mean?
Well, we talked about the cost of facilities, and I'm going to read this bullet. The built environment has a direct impact on productivity, emotion, and communication. Built environment is an architectural buzzword that means where you are, inside of a building or outside of a building. And the fact that it can have such a huge impact on your employees and on you makes it very important. It's not just about drawing lines on a floor plan and putting furniture in. It's about creating an environment where people enjoy being and doing their work and working with others. So facilities are a tool to get the job done. And that can either physically be something like a laboratory working on, a research problem, or it can be interacting with others to get it done.
I love what you have at the bottom. Don't let what you have keep you from where you want to go.
Dave is a great straight man. Back in the day, they used to have Ed McMahon and Johnny Carson. Well, Dave Lowe and Doug Lowe seem to work pretty well together. But that's a big one. Most people can't see the forest for the trees. And that may not be true in your world, but we've worked with a lot of people that are so focused on the minutia that they can't step back and even think about the bigger picture. Well, and that's really where you need to start.
It does make sense because they're not in the mindset of saying, what can I change about my facility today? They're in the mindset of, hey, I'm in my lane doing my thing, right, Doug?
Yeah. And you're working full time on it. So, you don't really have time to do this. So it's a forced effort. And I'm here to tell you, it's not rocket science. You just need a few tricks to get started.
Love it. Going to do the tricks in a minute. I promise. There's your teaser, everybody. Going to do the tricks. All right.
You know, you can read these bullets. These are good things, but that's what that's what facilities can be as a well-designed tool or a well thought through tool to do what you need to do. It doesn't have to be expensive. Usually funding's involved, but it's just a matter of making what you have work for what you need. And that will have an immediate impact on satisfaction, and it will set you up for success.
I love it. All right, I'm ending the poll. I'm going to share the results with everybody so you can see so we're not alone in this. Everybody's got an issue. That's why you're here. You came here for a reason. So the number one is remote workers returning to the office, because that creates an influx of something that they weren't even thinking about for 5 years.
Yep.
Right? And then we talk about mission and not enough desks. So those two things, those are the two, right? And you were mentioning about folks not thinking about their facilities because they're going after the agency's mission, right?
Right.
Love it. And then let me do this real quick. I'm gonna view the details here. I'm gonna say for the ones, oh, for the love of Mary, come on, Zoom, help me out. I'm waiting on Zoom, ladies and gentlemen. Give me 1 second. I promise this will work, I think.
All right. While Dave's doing this, I'm going to tell a story about a client I once had. And we were talking about Workspace and what he needed. And he told me that, well, I need a desk so I'd have something to sit behind. He was obviously a gentleman from the previous century. And I like telling that story. I need a desk so I have something to sit behind.
All right. So we have limited or no funding for space optimization, better off trying to build it into another facility project rather than as a standalone. Space management is a territory goal. I came from Jared. You can probably help me out with that, Jared. Crystal, too centralized, need leased clinics spread around the market, but difficult to acquire. That's another thing, right? Where you have to expand into areas, especially the VA, right? Expand into areas that you don't currently have coverage. Here's one from Cindy: multiple desks crammed into a small space the size of a closet with only one outlet, fire hazards, etc. And then Kevin hit it right on the nail. Office building built in the 1940s. So I love that. I love it. So that gets us to the next part. One of my favorite pieces. Go ahead, Doug. Take us through this.
Okay. These are examples of some of the tools that we use in our planning, and it helps to begin to step back and look at the bigger picture or the overall issue. These are exploded views of floor plans of a building that show the individual spaces inside, the enclosed offices and the open areas. And they're color coded. They can be color coded by function, laboratory or office or conference room. They can be color coded by department. I like to say this is the Sesame Street tool for planning office space because it helps you line up colors, and there's an inherent efficiency when you can make things work. It also helps you understand functional relationships between facilities at a sort of a bird's eye view. Is like, well, why is that laid out like that? Just because it's always been that way, whether it's a 1940s office building or something newer. When missions change and agencies, kind of take on new responsibilities, oftentimes the facilities lag behind.
And thumbs up from people that they've ever done something because it was always done that way, or told to do something because it was always done that way. There's got to be at least one.
Right.
Anybody?
So the key here is the bottom bullet is telling a compelling story.
Yeah.
I hope I'm doing a little bit of that today, but that is really how you move forward. Is you get your ducks in a row, you use a little bit of data, some graphics that help understand what you're trying to say or present the information you're trying to present so that it can be understood quickly and easily. And then people can get on board and you can continue to peel the onion with more planning.
Love it.
So these are just some of the bullets that if you do this and you step into this world, it's a win. This is another, exploded view of a floor plan inside of a building of how people are, how departments are laid out and organizations are segregated by department or by function. So just examples of tools that you can use or we can help you use someone.
There you go. All right, let's talk about some case studies. So
let's do it. I've been talking too long. This is where I take a break. Brian's going to take over and talk about National Weather Service, one of the case studies that we thought was spot on when it comes to the need for a strategic facility assessment.
Well, thank you, Doug. Yes, National Weather Service was a wonderful project and a wonderful client that we've been working with for many, many years. The National Weather Service has an interesting problem. In the late 80s, early 90s, they underwent a massive rebuilding campaign to rebuild more than 180 locations across the country. And what they did is they designed all these facilities in the late 80s to accommodate how they were operating and functioning in the late 80s, built them in the early 90s. 20 years later, the facilities remain the same as when they built them, but technology is different. How they function in the building is different. Their mission has changed. And as with all buildings that were built all at the exact same time, their systems began to fail all at the same time. They became due at the end of their life cycle after 20 years. So the Weather Service said, wait a minute. Silver Spring knew that they had assets out in the field, but they didn't know what kind of condition they were in. They didn't know what they had out in the field as far as did anybody modify anything. And what they really wanted to know is were these buildings that were built back in the early 90s, were they able to function with the current mission that the Weather Service is putting forward? So what we did is we went out to each and every single one of them across the country, Dave. That's exactly when you were saying, have you been across the country? Yes, I have. For the National Weather Service. And we looked at every single location to understand exactly how they were using these facilities. What we came across is that we have a standardized brick box that is actually built at every location. Very challenging to modify on the exterior. So we knew that if anything had to be done, had to all be done and retrofitted within the four walls that they had. So we had to take a look at how they were using the existing facilities, the technology that was there currently, how the technology has changed, and how they were operating. And what we did is that we were able to take a look at their operations from the inside and identify square footage and areas that they could reconfigure and take advantage of the changing technology to where we could reduce some spaces and increase other spaces. Gave them some additional capacity for their operation centers, streamline their operations by saying some of these pieces you don't need any longer. And we improved a lot of their efficiency. Some of the interesting modifications were accommodated across the country. Some folks had taken advantage of being away from a distance from Silver Spring, and they were able to do some modifications on their own. We were able to take some of the best of these ideas and bring them back to Silver Spring and say should be implemented across the country. And we outlined a strategic plan for them to take forward and say, this is what we should do. We wrote the books, put the information together, gave them a roadmap to how they could function better, how they could modify the existing facilities. They took it up to the hill and actually got funding, and they're beginning to implement them as we're going forward. So it's actually being put in place now. A lot of the changes that we've actually identified. So that's how we were able to have helped the National Weather Service. I know that is a very broad brush and a very high level to talk about these facilities and what we did. But someone in the statement said that we wanted to make it short. So I'm just trying to give you a little bit of an overview of what's going on with these facilities.
love it. So I think there's a lot of folks, especially buildings that are built in 1940s, there are restrictions. You just can't move things like you know.
Well, that's actually, Dave, that's kind of leading into the second case study, if you want to go to that one, because the National Oceanic Service came to us and said, hey, you're helping the Weather Service. Can you help us too? They all fell under the NOAA umbrella. And so they said, we have a lot of our legacy facilities, some built in the 1930s that are currently trying to operate modern research. out of buildings that were never built to accommodate that. Also, they're all built in hazardous areas. They're all built on coastlines where there's rising sea levels, or they have inclement weather that they have to deal with. So what we did is we took a look at all their facilities and identified on the existing facilities where they could modernize some of their existing facilities, which ones should be upgraded, which ones should be decommissioned, some should be just plain removed and disposed of. And we showed them where, look, some of your older facilities in the 1930s, while they're beautiful and wonderful facilities, maybe they need to have lower functions in there. And we moved the higher needed functions into other buildings that had a little bit more security to them, security weather-wise and technology, and to actually prioritize those improvements to get a lot better capacity and capabilities in the facilities. We looked at each of their sites. It wasn't just individual buildings, it was actually campuses, to give them a complete overview of what they should be doing on their campuses and how they could be using their buildings better. It's a different approach when they are basically, a lot of the folks that are working there inherited what they had. And it's that common story. Well, we've always been using these facilities this way because that's what we were told to do. We took a different approach and said, okay, what happens if you start from scratch? And let's look at all the buildings and how they're using them. And what we did is we gave them we prepared a plan of action for them against the failures from weather-related incidents, but also talked about mission criticality and how we can ensure that their missions would continue in special cases when disasters occurred. We wrote this report up, also sent it up to the Hill, and they actually were getting funding to put some of these pieces in place. So there's a little bit of movement there, and some of the changes that are happening as they were going, as time goes by, hopefully we'll have a lot more of the improvements in place.
And different agencies get funded different ways, but
Yes.
in this instance, you're still doing the support, and you have to show how you're meeting the EO for DOGE. You're talking about other funding challenges that folks are having because of
Exactly.
any number of reasons, right?
And in these two cases, actually, before DOGE even came about, when we were looking at the National Weather Service, we were able to identify how they could actually use their facilities more effectively, garner more seats in the spaces without actually moving any exterior walls. It was just movement of interior partitions. And it was relatively easy for them to do. Some had already started to do it. When they looked at what the ideas were, we were pointing to walls and say, okay, well, if we move this over a little bit, you can put more spaces in there. Good idea. Next thing you know, hammers start coming out. Well, that's not what we advised, but that's what was happening. So yes, we have started, I guess we started looking at efficiencies before DOGE even started. But that also comes into the third case study, which is actually the sanctuaries, which was part of, sanctuaries is also part of NOAA. And that one carried forward with what we were doing for the Weather Service and NOS. And Doug actually worked on these. So go ahead, Doug.
There was a lot of talk earlier on in our hour today about technology and how technology impacts the workplace. And this case study really points that, or brings that up to a T. The marine sanctuaries are underwater. They're offshore in our oceans and Great Lakes. And the facilities are, of course, onshore. And the mission is the research and protection and education of these very valuable, waterside facility or assets. So the strategic alignment of the facilities for marine sanctuaries had to do with things that you couldn't touch. In the past, there was a lot of paper-based examples, posters hanging on the wall, for example, trying to educate or examine. Well, the facilities alignment here took technology and said, how do we take these assets and create an immersive experience so that when people are in our facilities, they feel like they are actually experiencing a marine sanctuary. And these were all over the country. So it was a different solution at each location, but there was a consistency in terms of how do we make the staff feel like they are working in these assets, even though they're underwater? And how do we make our visitors and the people we're trying to educate, to people trying to outreach to, feel like they are a part of the experience as well? Next one. So in addition, for marine sanctuaries, in addition to the physical problems of desks and chairs and places to do work, there was also the need or the opportunity to say, let's use technology. Let's just not have a Zoom call. Let's figure out how we can make people feel like they are inside or visiting a marine sanctuary. And we thought that was a great solution. And it set up the marine sanctuaries to get funding, because it was a very easy sell once the message or the story could be told that this is what you should be doing. It's not about posters on a wall. It's about making people feel the importance of these assets. Mission driven.
Love that. And I love the fact that the immersive experience is because it's underwater to begin with. All right, so let's get into some practical things that folks can take away today. And I
Okay.
love some of your explanations here.
This is what I call the so what part of the story. Why would you even do this? What's in it for me for a strategic facility assessment? Well, it gives you that actionable roadmap. Somebody asked about that to begin with. I can't give it to you today in 45 minutes, but I can help you start thinking in terms of building one for yourself. What are some of the solutions that you can do? What tools do you need? And how can you get there? And that's the way you can start thinking about, well, how do I eat this elephant? To use that same metaphor, you eat it one bite at a time. And if you get a good story and you talk about credible options and you use a little bit of data, you can get funding, and then you can keep moving forward to implement changes.
Sorry about that. I just realized I had a poll that was out there. I do have a comment from Neil, and I don't know if this is pertinent right now, but we'll lay it out here. When a facility repair is needed, finding out if a contractor pays or a government pays due to a vague statement of work. I'm not sure what you would have for Neil today. Do you have anything to talk about that with?
No, but yes. That's a pretty bad way to respond to a question. Coming up with a definition of the problem, which is the statement of work, is an outgrowth of the facility assessment. You've looked at the data, you've understood what your options are, you've come up with a solution, and this is what you want a contractor or a vendor to do to accomplish these steps.
And that was also part of the National Weather Service project, as well as NOS, as we were going forward and making the changes and discussing the changes that would be provided. We also gave them an idea of the costing of what they potentially could expect out of a project cost going forward. So we identified that from the outset.
All right, so now we're going to find out from your perspective. I mean, there's a lot of things that can be in your way. We heard about funding. We've heard about existing facilities, different operational challenges. What's in your way of being able to do to make the changes? And then we're going to take them step by step of how to get to where they want to go, right? Right, Doug?
Right.
Awesome. And while they're filling that out, actually, we can do this. So I love what you said. You have to define the problem first, because that's what gets you to at least solve some of the problems that Neil has, right?
Yep. So the first thing to start with are the cards you've been dealt. What is your mission? What kind of workforce? What sort of requirements are being imposed upon that workforce, like return to work, for example, return to office? And what are your current facilities? Just do a whiteboard assessment of those three things, 3 columns on a whiteboard. What you're trying to do, what you are obligated to do by mission, what assets do you have in terms of people to do that, and how can you make their jobs easier, and what facilities are you living in? Second step is, how do you use it? So now you can begin to envision for those 3 things, 3 columns on the first whiteboard, you go to another whiteboard, and you talk about what would the ideal workflow be if you weren't in a 1940s facility, or if you had not stopped coming into the office for a few years and had to deal with coming back. How would you diagram your workflow? What is the way to envision your facilities to wrap around, if you will, your existing mission?
And we had a lot of folks asking about like remote working or having the issue of people coming back in and dealing with, like what you're talking about, hoteling space. All that has to be factored into this, right?
Right. And hoteling space wasn't a concept back in the 1990s when many of your buildings were built. That's just a term, by the way, that means that a place when people come into your office, not having their permanent workspace or office, they need a place to sit down, to do work.
I like what you have at the bottom. How should it get done? And the folks that are here all have insight on just minor changes that they can make that would make things better. Don't you think that when you start getting that feedback, that's where it comes from?
Certainly.
Yeah.
So now you've got 2 whiteboards. One's filled up with what you've got, and one's filled up with how you use it. So the third one is, what should you do? What do you need? How do you begin to blend the cards that you've been dealt with your mission and how you should be doing your mission? And where are the problems with quality, quantity, and location? What are the adjacencies? What about downsizing? People talked about squeezing too many desks into a room. Well, maybe there's a better way to be doing work for that particular instance. Start by taking the blinders off, and don't just kind of solve yesterday's problem. Think about the weather service and or the marine sanctuaries, and think about how they went from a poster on the wall to an immersive technology, an immersive experience. What is it about your facilities and your mission that on your third whiteboard, you can begin to blue sky and say, wouldn't it be great if? And that if sets you up for the next step. And of course, don't forget about the stuff that's above the ceiling and behind the walls, because sometimes, as Brian talked about in the earlier case studies,
that'll get you.
There's some infrastructure issues.
Yes.
So then you get it. Now you've come up with a strategic plan. You have looked at what you've got, you've looked at what you need, you've looked at alternatives, and you have built a strategic plan literally on the back of a napkin. You haven't hired anybody, you haven't spent any money, you just kind of locked yourself in a war room and you said, this is really what we need. And you've created a story or an elevator speech that you can talk to other people about and say, I'd like permission to keep going on this, whoever it is whoever you report to, and let them say, yeah, this is a good idea. I understand. You've thought it through. Now take some next steps and you can achieve success.
I love that. So, and you mentioned the back of a napkin or whatever it happens to be. You don't have, or whiteboards, right? It doesn't have to be sophisticated to start. You can actually start now.
I like to use the back of a napkin because if you start with the details, if you start trying to draw lines on a floor plan, then you will get wrapped around the axle very quickly. I prefer the back of a napkin approach because it implies that you are standing up a brand new mission. You know, there's a great story from the 1960s when Southwest Airlines was just getting started. And the legacy of that company or the history of that company talks about how the founders took out a napkin and drew lines between Dallas, San Antonio, and Houston, Texas. And they started an airline with one plane, maybe two planes, one flying in each direction. And that was the beginning of Southwest Airlines many, many years ago. They didn't start with all the details and they didn't start in the weeds. They started with how do we serve the traveling public? What would be their mission? So start with the back of a napkin.
Yes, and some of the other things that you guys have to deal with, and some of you are probably going to face some of these problems. Doug had mentioned starting with a back of a napkin and start to identify what your needs actually are. One of the things that we found, especially with the Weather Service, when we started that project, we engaged as many people as we possibly could. The whole idea was that if we were going to propose any changes, we needed to have buy-in from the outset, not just at the Silver Spring site, but even at the sites of the individual locations for the Weather Service. We engaged anybody that would talk to us when we were there. And that's the way you start to build a momentum to move forward for the change. One person trying to drive a master plan or trying to drive an idea through a company through a different department or someone that's trying to run a mission, it's sometimes not going to work because everybody has different ideas of how to do it. The whole idea
There,
of put forward different ideas and put them forward and get everybody's buy-in, not just one person that's going to run up the hill and it's the wrong idea for the wrong time in the wrong place.
It doesn't
Good
work.
idea, but it doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
Exactly. And if you don't have buy-in from everybody on board, what's going to ultimately happen is you're going to put a plan in place. It's going to be wonderful, and it's going to be great, and everybody approves it. It's going to sit on a shelf and then never be implemented.
That's never happened with anybody here. I know that.
I saw a chat pop up a few seconds back about what happens if leadership doesn't get on board. And that's what Brian was talking about. One tool that can help is using some basic data.
Exactly.
People will argue with you about your opinion, but they're less likely to argue about well-substantiated data. And if you can make it an evidence-based story, that's helpful. Maybe that's, you have, 5 people working in a room at 25 square feet per employee, and the government standard is, 3 times that, or whatever it is. Use data as your friend.
Yep, that's great, Crystal. Great question. And when the data is completely ignored because that's not how they feel, that's part of the issue. Is that buy-in? Getting buy-in
Right.
from people is not easy, right, guys?
Absolutely. It is not easy.
Getting them to share what they feel is it's kind of psychology 101. People like to talk about what's important to them. So find out what is important to them, and then you use that to work the plan.
It's also critical from the outset to take all the problems that you have and put it on the table so that everybody gets to deal with them, not just one person.
And then everybody gets to be able to see them too, right?
Exactly.
So if everybody sees everybody's different perspectives, then you can start to build a consensus of kind of, hey, these are prioritized. You mentioned that in another slide is prioritizing those things to say, hey, this is a big issue.
Yes.
And helping people see is very important. We put up some graphics earlier about exploded views of buildings and color coding, and that's not necessary. You can do it literally. I keep repeating back of a napkin and a marker, but I once had a client who took a piece of paper and a magic marker and literally drew out, almost in a kindergarten style, his vision for the kind of campus he was trying to create for his agency. And that diagram, as simplistic and childlike as it was so easy to grasp. And it made it all the way through the final presentation. So don't be afraid that it has to be perfect. Neatness does not count when you're trying to convey an idea or build something from scratch or make an improvement. There's plenty of time for computer-generated graphics. What you need to start with is a concept. And you can all Google how many concept drawings and how many products have started in history based on just little thumbnail sketches.
Yep. And we got some questions coming in. We're going to get to those. Love everything you just said, and the ability to bring people through the process from just sitting down. And I love it. Back up just a little bit, just a little. Come out of the lane just a little bit, back up and say, I would like to do this, and this would keep me happier at my workspace. Isn't that a great place to start, Doug?
Yes. Happiness is a good thing.
We will. All right, so I'm going to get back to the questions just a minute. We do want to say, hey, what would you like to do? The whiteboards and napkins situation, top thing. If you'd like to just go through that drill, the on-site reviews, you guys can do that. You can create that. It's very effective. Try that. You can try the next steps doing that. As I mentioned earlier, you're under no obligation to buy from anybody here. If you like to, though, these guys have a GSA contract, and there was a question that came in, the changes in the FAR. We didn't get into a whole lot of the FAR, but a lot of things are pulling back into GSA for control. Certainly from facilities, that's been a big deal. VA and GSA are the two grand poobahs when it comes to facilities. But there's information here you can get from that. You'll get a recap email. It'll be coming soon. Somebody asked for that, and I put that into the Q&A. I think who was that? That was Priscilla asked that question. The presentation is being recorded. You can grab the docs from the link that I have right there, provided you're not from the Air Force right now. We'll get those to you as well. If you can't get to those docs, please let me know. We'll make sure we get those as attachments to you so you can have those as takeaways. And you have the capabilities from facilities programming and consulting. You have a link to the video. If you need a continuing education credit, all you need to do is get approval from your supervisor. You can get that. And then next steps meeting is what you're filling out right now. If there's anything that you would like to do, next steps with facilities programming, and just let us know what you would like, and we'll make sure you get that. And we will do this real quick. We'll get to the questions now. And if you had, like I said, if you have anything that you want individually outside of this, don't want everybody else to hear it because this is being recorded. Shay is saying, regarding data, how long did the 3 case studies take to implement from planning to build out, and how much did each of the case studies design changes cost? So first things first, how long did it take to implement from planning to build out? You want to pick one of those to talk about?
Well, if we want to start with the weather service, that project was actually divided up into 3 different phases. It was 180 different sites, so we had to break it up. Going across the country was not all at one shot. So each piece took about a year to accomplish, and it was going to about 70 sites across the board, because you're seeing 180, but there were actually more facilities than that. So it was about 70 sites, and it was about a year in the planning process, 6 months to do the study for each of the different pieces, and then funding came. I want to say it was about a year later from when everything went through Capitol Hill, and then the funding came about a year after that. The implementation, well, they're in the middle of what's the implementation now through some of the first phases. Then also for NOS, that one was a little bit different. We did that project within NOAA at the same time as we were doing a National Weather Service. So we were able to track a lot of the different projects together. That one in itself took about 6 months to complete. We put everything together, went up to the Hill, and they were able to get funding in the next legislative session. It took about another year to get going, and then implementation, I think they're still in the process of implementation now.
All right, Shay, for that. And then how much did the case study design costs?
Each one was different. There was not one set fee for the National Weather Service. Each of the different sites had a different costing factor based on the conditions of the existing facilities and what was actually needed to be changed or modified. While every one of the sites had the same 4 boxes, same 4 walls, they actually had 3 different models. Each one required, each set of the 3 required a little bit of a different modification.
Shay, I just gave you the chance to unmute for a second. Can you unmute? Because I'd like to see if there's anything else you want to dig into that with. Let me know if your microphone works. You can unmute. Just want to make sure we hit that for you. Let's see. And Steve was asking, can you show the case condition and proposed case resolution plan views? For that was, I think that came in the first one. Do you have, like, is that like expanded view for that?
I think we do have them. I just don't have the capability of doing that now.
Yeah,
Of showing what some of the modifications actually were.
sure. And Shay says that's perfect. That worked out for him. All right, if you have any other questions, just pop those in there. Anybody that needs to jump, we got you out of here 5 minutes before, so you can go do your bio break and then get on to the rest of your day with whatever you got. We really appreciate you guys joining us. We'll get some follow-ups out there for everybody. You're welcome, Tanya. We appreciate that. Steve, appreciate you too. Yeah, we'll make sure that you get the follow-up email as well as anything else. And I highly encourage you, hey, it doesn't cost anything to talk to Doug or Brian for a few minutes and say, am I writing my napkin right, Doug?
That's right.
So that makes it easy for everybody. So let us know what else you need from us. Otherwise, we'll let you guys get out of here. Great stuff. I always love hearing what you have to say, Doug and Brian, because real life things that help people get their facilities done.
Thank you very much, Dave. We appreciate you guys taking the time with us today.
You bet. Kevin says, good and informative session. Appreciate that, Kevin. We did that right. And then if we didn't answer any of the questions that we needed, let us know and we'll get that done for you. All right, guys, we're gonna get you out of here. Does that sound good? All right. Appreciate you. Great stuff, Doug.
Okay.
See you guys.
Thanks, guys.